how Putin, Trump, and Xi Jinping can divide the world. While the world was once unified and multipolar, now we see it rapidly splintering into several key spheres of influence, which are increasingly controlled by the world's three superpowers: Russia, the United States, and China. The situation around Ukraine, as sad as it sounds, has been the catalyst for this global process. This war may not only decide the fate of Eastern Europe, but also open the way to a new division of the world, where each of these countries will have its own zone of influence over entire continents. Let us understand how this could happen. The Yalta Conference as a historical precedent. Parallels with history are drawn not only by experts, but also by major international publications. In particular, an article in Newsweek notes the similarity between the modern process of dividing the world and the Yalta Conference of 1945. Three great powers, the USSR, Great Britain, and the USA, met at Yalta. At that time, the fate of the countries of Eastern Europe, at that time divided between the Allies, or rather, between the Eastern and Western blocs, was decided. In fact, the Yalta Conference decided the future fate of Europe for several decades to come. As then, today, not only territory, but also the balance of power is at stake. Of course, Ukraine is not the same as Eastern Europe in 1945, but parallels can be drawn between Yalta and current events. After all, now, as then, some states are trying to isolate themselves and control certain regions of the world, while others are trying to unite into blocs. Quote, Yalta was the place where the great powers decided the future of Eastern Europe. This is what it looks like now with regard to Ukraine. Deciding the future of Ukraine without Ukraine is also deciding the future of Europe without Europe, said Vesela Cerneva, Deputy Director of the European Council on Foreign Relations. This statement underscores one of the main problems of modern geopolitics. Countries are put on the back burner in discussions about the fate of their future. Ukraine, like Eastern Europe in 1945, is becoming a hostage in a larger game. How do the US, Russia, and China divide the world? The American magazine Newsweek offers its map of the world divided into three parts, each to be controlled by one of the world's superpowers. Look at the picture. Russia, the article claims, will be in charge of Europe, including the Transcaucasian countries and Turkey. The US, on the other hand, will focus on North America and will control key points such as Greenland, the Panama Canal, and possibly other strategic locations. China will gain parts of Asia, including Japan, India, and Pakistan, which will strengthen its influence in the region. Part 1. Russia. Russia in today's world politics is a powerful force seeking to regain its position lost after the collapse of the Soviet Union. After the events in Ukraine, when the Russian Federation annexed Crimea and then started the war in Donbass, Europe was forced to change its policy towards Russia. However, to this day, some European countries remain in Russia's sphere of influence, such as Bulgaria, Hungary, and other countries with strong energy and economic ties to Russia. In addition, Russia continues to build its military might on the European border, which hardly allows us to talk about the warmth of relations between Moscow and Brussels. In turn, Russia is already actively building alliances with countries such as Venezuela and Syria to create a counterweight to the West. Thus, Russia's sphere of influence could be truly wide-ranging. Part 2. US. As far as the US is concerned, America's strategic interest in recent years has manifested itself in strengthening its position in other parts of the world. Trump has declared his intention to increase his control over Greenland. Although his attempt to buy Greenland was rejected, U.S. interest in the region has not waned. America continues to be the largest economic and military power, controlling much of the world's sea lanes and influencing the decisions of most international organizations, such as the UN, NATO, and the World Trade Organization. Part 3. China. One of the most significant players on the world stage remains China. In recent decades, China has seen its economy grow impressively, becoming the world's second-largest economy after the United States. But Chinese influence extends beyond the economy. Beijing is actively strengthening its position in the political sphere, forging an alliance with Russia and controlling important trade routes. China has ambitions to strengthen its influence over Southeast Asia, which became evident in the early 2000s when Beijing began actively building military bases in the South China Sea. In 2020, China became the world's largest economy in terms of trade with Africa and Latin America, which also increases its political weight on the international stage. According to analysts, China may have an advantage in its strategic partnership with Russia, and this partnership could play a key role in the future division of the world. Ukraine's prospects in the New World Order. One of the most striking examples of the struggle for geopolitical influence is Ukraine. The events that are unfolding in this country clearly show how world powers can use conflict to achieve their goals. Recently, there have been several statements that make it clear that Ukraine may not just be an object of conflict, but also a subject of division of spheres of influence. Donald Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg, has stated that Ukraine could be partitioned along the lines of the post-war partition of Germany. Allegedly, the western part of Ukraine could be under the control of the United States and its allies, while the eastern part would remain in the Russian sphere of influence. Many experts believe that Ukraine's future is not in the hands of its own citizens, but in the hands of the big powers, which will probably decide its fate without Ukraine's participation in this process. What will happen to Ukraine in the long term? Will it be decades before the country becomes neutral, or, on the contrary, enters the international arena as an independent player? Conclusion. So, the world in the future will probably be divided into several geopolitical zones, and each of them will have its own rules of the game. But it is important to remember that these changes do not always happen peacefully. Behind each such partition, there may be many victims. Therefore, this process should be closely monitored in order to be ready for a critical situation. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. New episodes every day will tell you what's really going on in the world.